Monday, 23rd May 2016, close to 5,000 delegates gathered at the Mlungushu International Conference Center in Lusaka for the annual meeting of the African Development Bank. Over 80 central bank governors, finance ministers, and trade and economy ministers will take part in close to 40 official meetings aimed at debating the social and economic development of the continent. The annual meetings are taking place at a time when many countries on the continent are slowly dragging themselves out of the challenges of food insecurity, energy crisis, low metal prices, and generally a sluggish economy. Any solutions to these challenges expected to come out of these high-level meetings? You're watching Sunday Interview, and my guest this evening is Secretary to the Treasury, Mr. Fredson Yamba. Sir, good evening and welcome to the program.
Good evening, Grevazio, and thank you for inviting me here.
The African Development Bank has been in existence for over 50 years, and our relationship with the bank as a country, we speak of Zambia, has been running for over 40 years. Is there anything to show for this?
Sure, there is. I mean, since the early 70s, I think the bank has invested about $2 billion in Zambia, and the projects range from infrastructure, agriculture, energy, education, and also resource management. And some of the major projects that have been undertaken by the Africa Development Bank include the Kariba Dam Rehabilitation Project, Kazungula Bridge Project, the Cashew Infrastructure Development Project, Climate Resilient Project, E.R.C Hydro Power and Transmission Project, Lusaka and Water Sanitation Project, and also Chinsali Nakonde Road. So that's something with what the bank has done with regard to contributing to Zambia's development.
Over $2 million invested over this period of time. $2 billion. The impact should really be massive. Would you describe what you've just mentioned as a massive impact on the lives of Zambians?
Definitely. If you look at the impact, even though you cannot measure it, it's cross-cutting in the sense that the livelihoods of the people have been improved, and what you see at the end of the day is that here is a bank which is actually helping this country to reduce the poverty levels. So what you see is that we are having benefits. If you look at, say, E.R.C power transmission, we already have electricity being generated and is contributing to the national grid. If you look at Chinsali Nakonde Road, I mean, it's contributing to the smooth movement of traffic and also just human beings. So if you look at, again, Kazungula Bridge project, I think, again, this eases the movement of people. At the end of the day, that's a contribution to the general populace of this country.
I'll take you back to 1964 when the AfDB was founded. Just about the year Zambia got independence, the focus then was to promote sustainable growth and reduce poverty. Looking at the current situation, poverty levels are still high. Sustainable growth is still questionable. Would you say the bank has not made the impact that everybody expected from it, or still expects from it?
Well, the bank has made an impact, and poverty, Grevazio, is a relative term. I mean, even if you look at the most developed countries, there is an element of poverty in there. But if you compare it to Zambia, yes, when you say, have they contributed to poverty reduction, the answer is definitely yes, because their contribution has improved the livelihoods of the ordinary people. So you see their contribution with regard to sanitation. That means now you have access to clean water and also sanitation facilities, the road infrastructure. In the social sector, their contribution in education, that entails you have higher literacy levels, and in that way you are helping the community to live in a better and improved environment. So what you see ultimately is the poverty levels, especially extreme poverty, being reduced because of the contribution of the bank.
Now, you did outline the areas that the bank has invested in Zambia. We're talking about education, we're talking about health, transport, other multi-sector areas, including budget support. In your view, what would you describe as the sector that has benefited the most from funding from ADB?
Well, I think all the sectors have, but I think to clearly pinpoint, if you look at the sectors like energy, transport in particular, these have benefited about 47% of what we've received from the bank. But notwithstanding, even other sectors relatively, they've also had their fair share. But of course, transport, especially as it relates to infrastructure development, has been one of the major beneficiaries of the funds that we've gotten from the Africa Development Bank.
In terms of impact, which one would you say has had the most impact?
The impact is difficult to ascertain exactly where the major impact has been. But of course, if you look at the Zambian economy, I think one of the things that is lacking to improve, say, the development activities has been the inadequate infrastructure, more especially the road network. So to do anything, to transport the goods, to take pupils to school, to whatever you want to do, you need a good road network, including tourism, agriculture. Without a good road network, you find that you are unable to actually undertake these economic activities. So my take would be that the major contribution has been in the infrastructure development as it relates to transport.
Now, I want to take you on the 47% invested in transport, and looking at what we're talking about now, what the current, the realistic situation on the ground. We're looking at Zambia facing a biting energy problem, and we also have talk about diversifying the economy, stop depending on metals. Is that a good balance? 47 for transport? Would you want to get more money for other sectors? I know that agriculture and energy stand at 14% in terms of funding that we've got from ADB.
Yeah, well, I think what is important to understand is that ADB is not only the only source of financing that we're getting, but also from other financiers. But if you look at the issue of energy, yes, where there's a crisis, we actually need more money to go in that particular sector. And with the challenges that we've had with regard to the poor rainfall patterns, I think then alternatively we needed to invest in the other forms of generating energy like solar. So, and this has happened over a period of time. I think what we've lacked in Zambia was lack of foresight to invest in other sectors apart from hydro, because we all understood quite clearly from the onset that the weather patterns were going to change. This region was going to become more drier. So when we focused more on hydro generation, I think what we did not foresee was a situation that later on this is going to be a challenge. Why not look at other sources of energy? And this is where we could have invested. So yes, we need to do that now in order to see that we've adequate power made available. So we need to look at other sectors like solar. Apart from solar, we also have coal and any other sources of gas to see how best then we can remedy the challenge that we have on our hands.
I wanted to still look at the 2011 to 2015 country strategy for Zambia. It expired in December, and the report was supposed to have come out in April, the assessment report. What did it speak to?
Well, the report, Grevazio, has actually been compiled. It's in its final stage, and once the report is ready, then we're going to see how best then we can move forward. But at the moment, I think it's going to be premature for me to mention that this is the outcome of the report.
The new strategy, according to what is pertaining, is that you want to take a new focus, a stronger focus on private sector development, given its importance in terms of job creation for many Zambians. Is this the way you want to go?
Well, like I said, that we had the country strategy paper, which is, we did a review, and the report is not yet ready. But I think what is important to understand is that government has also been working on the 7th National Development Plan. So I think that report should actually tie up with what is contained in the 7th National Development Plan, so that there's a harmony going forward with regard to what the country wants to do. At the same time, yes, the whole issue of private sector development is an important component, because at the end of the day, it's a private sector which is supposed to drive this economy. And I think the major role of government is to try and see how best then they can tax the private sector, get some monies and invest this, and put this money in the social sectors like health and education.
Mm-hmm. Still looking at the AdB and Zambia's relationship, how would you describe the relationship currently?
Well, I would say that the relationship is good or fantastic, for lack of a better term. The government and AdB are always in constant dialogue to see how best we can benefit. As you know, we are a member of the Africa Development Bank, and we are always trying to see how best we can benefit from this particular institution.
I want to take you to the issue of loans. I know that day-to-day decisions about which loan and grants should be approved and what constitutes that and the guidelines are taken by Board of Executive Directors, and members are represented depending, their voting power differs. Does this really affect how the loans are approved, or our ability to access these loans? Does our voting power affect how we access the loans?
Not at all, Grevazio. I think the bank, yes, is made up of different members. Some have more shares, and you know, we have shareholders like the US, Japan, France, and other African countries who are shareholders, including ourselves as Zambia. But when it comes to the type of you know, the projects that we're going to present to the bank for approval, that depends on how feasible that particular project is. So we need to do a very good appraisal of a particular project and submit it to the bank. So that has nothing to do with our shareholding. It's the bankability of the project that we are presenting to the Africa Development Bank. Once they are satisfied with our feasibility studies and you know, the benefits that will accrue to that particular project, they will approve it. Mm-hmm. So it has nothing to do with our shareholding.
Mm-hmm. Let's look at recently Zambia signed a loan worth $125 million to go towards sanitation, food security, and support to women entrepreneurship. What is the expected impact of this project?
Well, the expected impact is quite clear. I mean, if it's going to sanitation, the women, that will go a long way to reduce poverty. Because what will happen is that if you, say for instance, if you look at the women, you empower them, I think then that gives them an opportunity to engage in economic activities and ultimately improve their livelihoods, not only their family, but also contribute to the country at large. So that particular loan we're talking about will ultimately contribute to poverty reduction, and that's a goal, and also just generate revenues not only for the households but for the entire economy at large.
The sanitation, where are we taking this project?
Yeah, sanitation.
Urban areas only? Yeah,
sanitation has to do with water and, you know, facilities that are able to put waste in a more, can I say, humane manner, as opposed to having, say, for instance, pit latrines. You can now ensure that you have running water in taps, and you know, you can have flushable toilets. So what will happen at the end of the day is that you are improving the quality of lives of people, and in that particular manner you are reducing you know, poverty.
I want to talk about whether the AfDB has adequate resources in terms of lending the member countries.
Well, any bank does not have you know, a limitless amount of money they have, yes, some money, but this is not adequate to cater for all the demands that are put before them.
Now, speaking to that, I was going to say, sometimes when I ask about the loans, one is tempted to ask, why do we go to the open market as a country and we leave institutions like ADB that will give us concessional loans?
Well, like I indicated, that the amount of money available by Africa Development Bank is limited. And if it's limited, then what we need to do, because our demands with regard to the projects that we want to undertake cannot all be met by Africa Development Bank. And apart from that, we also look at our own domestic resources. You find that the amounts of money that we are able to raise domestically cannot meet what we want to undertake in order to spur economic growth in this country. So as a country, we are then inclined to look at other sources. So we go to the commercial window. If we see that we have the ability to repay these loans, then we are able to tap into the commercial window. So what we do is to undertake a debt sustainability study to see whether our debts are sustainable in the long run when we accrue extra debt. So that's what we do as as a country. So we look at ADB giving us concessional. Actually, as Zambia, we are a blend. We can get a bit under concessional funds and a bit on the commercial side, but the funds are limited. Then we say, all right, let's look at the other avenue. Then we look at the commercial side. You go, like for instance, we'll tap into the Euro bonds, which are slightly expensive, but of course, we look at the effect of this loan. Is it going to help us spur economic growth? And if the answer is yes, then we go ahead, and also we look at the interest rates and try and see that in the long run we are able to repay back these loans. So that's the way we undertake the loans, apart from going to ADB.
I want to put you on your defense, on the spot, in defense of Africa Development Bank. Quite a number of concerns have come through from independent observers, some not really independent, but they've said AfDB does not give serious attention to providing loans where government waste will be minimized. They don't really emphasize on accountability. Is that a correct position?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, ADB is like any other bank. I mean, they'll look, like I said earlier on, they have some guiding principles, and they'll look at whether what you are going to get is going to go in a particular project where you've done some feasibility study, and that particular project then can pass. So when the monies are being released by the bank, then the bank should be sure that, look, they'll go and for the intended purpose, and this is done above board in a very transparent and accountable manner. So there is no way that the funds that are coming from ADB could be diverted into other activities. There's a framework that the bank uses, and they are also assessed by the rating agents, and currently their ratings are so high, it's AA+, and in that respect, that means they are conducting business in a very transparent and accountable manner, and that reflects that their money is not going to waste or abuse by governments.
Another concern is that the bank is slowly diverted from its mission of serving the welfare of the people and slowly becoming a copycat of IMF and the World Bank. Is that a correct assessment?
Not at all. I think the bank, like you mentioned in your introduction, the bank is made up of various shareholders, and the governors, who are mainly like finance ministers, are shareholders in that bank, and they do, like they are going to do in this particular meetings that we'll have. One of them is to approve the agenda going forward. So I don't think that they are copying what the IMF and World Bank are doing. They operate independently, and they're able to make their own assessments with regard to the way they are going to provide the loans to those countries in Africa who want to benefit from the funds.
Now, one other thing that I need to mention is that one of the mantras for the bank has been closing Africa's huge infrastructure development gap. How would you assess the performance of AfDB in this area?
I think AfDB has done the best that they can, especially with regard to transnational projects, that is projects that cut across various countries. They've been funding this, and in the past, I think, years, they've tried to ensure that here are these particular projects which try to link, the continent together. It's not only with regard to transportation, but also with generation of power, so that at the end of the day we can see economic development in the continent. So Africa Development Bank has done the best that they can, and I think they still have that focus to see that Africa gets out of this quagmire of poverty, especially extreme poverty.
Now, looking at the way the bank is operating, do you see a future where AfDB will overtake the World Bank, for instance, in having projects on the continent? The argument now is that the World Bank takes the lead, and AfDB, which is the only regional bank for Africa, is following behind.
Well, the World Bank will take a lead, Grevazio, because it has more membership. Now, if you look at the situation of Africa Development Bank, we are talking basically about the African countries, and also some countries which I mentioned, like the US, being part of that. But if you look at the World Bank, it encompasses all countries in the continent. So it's not only talking about Africa, but it's talking about Europe, Asia. The US itself is part of the World Bank. So you find that their resource base is bigger than the Africa Development Bank. So in essence, they will have more money on their table as opposed to the Africa Development Bank.
Is it because the Africa Development Bank probably has got a wrong financing model?
Not at all.
Depending mainly on other countries and other regions?
No, like I mentioned, I mean, look at the share structure of World Bank and AfDB. They're totally different. With us, it's much more Africa Development Bank. Their shareholding is smaller. The World Bank is bigger. So the bigger, and then they will have more room to access, people bringing money for further developmental projects.
As I've said, the Africans have failed to take reasonable responsibility for this bank, to drive the agenda for the bank. We've tended to depend on countries and regional banks that are not really in Africa to put money in the bank.
I don't think that's the position. I think the African banks, the African continent is trying itself to ensure that they invest more in the Africa Development Bank, so that at the end of the day, Africa Development Bank can improve its capital base. I think that's the future. So going forward with increased economic activity in Africa, I think we shall see an increase in terms of the amounts available for Africa Development Bank to spend.
I want to bring you back home. Let's look at the projects being funded by the AfDB. I want to single out one of them, which is the cashew nut infrastructure projects. This is quite a sentimental one, I guess, for the people of Zambia, because it's a very old project being revived using the funds of the AfDB.
Yes, Grevazio, I think the cashew nut project in the Western Province, where a project appraisal was done some time back, and the outcome of that was that, well, this is a feasible project. You can grow cashew nuts, and actually not only for local consumption, but also sell them, and then you can generate foreign exchange. It's an alternative for, to what we always talk about, economic diversification. I think in the western part of Zambia, that is one major potential source of income generation. Why? There's a greater demand for cashew nuts in the continent, and if we could do a good job, we can export. And the cashew nuts, the gestation period is far much less than mining. So you find that what you put in there, in a short period of time, you'll be able to generate those funds. And if you expand, you know, what you are growing in a short period of time, you'll be able to actually generate more money than we are generating from copper. So it is a very viable project, and it's something that we should look up to and ensure that it's a success. So I don't think that AdB has misplaced their priority by funding that particular project.
When it is done, what do Zambians expect to see?
Like I said, it will create employment, put more money to the people who will be employed there, but more importantly, again, it's a revenue to generate foreign exchange, which we greatly need in this country.
Now, how many districts is this project covering?
Well, in terms of the district, I cannot pinpoint, but basically it's in the Western Province and other parts that have been identified in the, I think, central part of Zambia. But again, I think what is required is to do more studies in certain areas where cashew nuts can be grown, and later on these can be processed and then exported.
Now, we're looking at the theme of this year's meetings as energy and climate change. How relevant is this to the Zambian scenario?
It's very relevant, Grevazio. You've seen that with regard to energy, there's a crisis. We are in a deficit situation simply because we rely on hydro power for generating electricity. Climate change, again, you've seen that we have had the El Nino, and what this has done is to impact negatively on agriculture production, especially our staple food, maize. But it has not only affected maize, but also other crops. And we rely in Zambia mainly on water-fed kind of agriculture. So this particular theme of energy and climate change comes at the right time when we are grappling with these issues to do with energy as well as climate change. How best can we try and resolve the issues? So I think when we'll have these meetings up and running, it is an opportunity for us to see how best then we can find solutions by, you know, exchanging ideas in the various platforms that are going to be held at the Mulungushi International Conference Center.
Any solutions expected to come out of this meeting for this particular problem, energy problem with Zambians? Of course, when Zambians hear that the theme is energy and climate, they'll be very excited, hoping there'll be a solution to the biting energy crisis in the country.
Definitely there should be solutions. I think what we should be looking at, like I earlier mentioned, is to look at the other alternative sources of energy. We've relied too much on hydro, and hydro depends on the rainfall pattern, but you can look at solar, and then you can look at other sources of energy, gas, and apart from that, we have coal. I mean, we have Mamba coal mine, which is going to come on, which will start generating power in the foreseeable future, maybe in July and so forth. So it's looking at other alternatives apart from looking at hydro power. What are the other sources of energy? And I think this is what we as Zambians are excited about. How do we learn from others? How have other countries been able to generate power apart from looking at hydro, which we've relied on since independence?
Do you expect that there'll be major shift in terms of funding by the AdB to move towards energy and climate change?
Well, definitely there has to, because if you look at the way we generate power and the challenges that we're facing with regard to climate change, I think there should be a shift to see how these can be mitigated. So in the discussions that are going to happen, we'll look at the outcomes, and my take is that the continent as a whole, I think, is thinking of how best can they move with regard to energy generation in the midst of these climate challenges that we have.
Now, what other issues are on the table for these annual meetings?
There are a number of issues. We'll have in the sidelines of the main a theme that is energy and climate. We'll have also the financial institutions discussing, looking at other alternative financing models. We'll also have the private sector discussing with the financiers on how best they can actually assess this finance. Also, we have the issues to do with the private sector development, and I think there will be engagements with various actors in the private sector, trying to see how they can relate with other people who are interested to do business in Zambia here. So there will be a whole range of, other activities taking place with regard to tourism, manufacturing, agriculture, agro-processing. Also, not to underestimate the whole issue of mining. I think it will be on the sidelines. How best can we move? Because mining is not only about copper. What about, the semi-precious stones and other metals? So there will be these sideline meetings which will be taking place. And what one expects is that we can tap in as Zambia, not only as a government, but also the business community will be accredited to ensure that they are able to exchange ideas and see how best they can, come up with businesses that will help this country move forward.
So what are we presenting as our case as Zambians?
As Zambia, we would like, it's a whole range of the issues that I've alluded to. But more importantly, I think we are part of the agenda to see how we can adopt proposals going forward with regard to the main theme, that is energy and the climate change. How are we going to tackle these issues? So that is our major take. But apart from that, we also need to see how best we can also tap into other ideas which our colleagues will present as we engage in the discussions.
Let's look at the hosting itself. The bank's annual meetings attract a very huge number of participants, and among these very high-profile participants, who are some of these people that are coming?
Well, we have a number of presidents who will be taking part, who will come for the official opening. So far, we have the president of Kenya coming. We have the president of Chad and also Rwanda. We have also former presidents that will grace the occasions, like also high personalities like Kofi Annan, who's will be here. We have Obasanjo will be here. In the private sector, again, we'll have some prominent businessmen who come and grace the occasion. So, apart from the political leadership who will be here, that is the governors who are actually finance ministers in their particular countries, we'll also have some business personnel who will be here to see what Zambia is able to offer.
Tell me more about how much has been spent. I know that hosting such a huge conference costs a lot of money. How much are we spending?
Well, our budget estimate, Grevazio, is 50 million kwacha, but we also have a contribution from the Africa Development Bank itself.
Are we ready for the conference?
We are ready. We had our last meeting today to see how progress is going with regard to the setting up of the infrastructure, which is on schedule. We have a number of committees looking at the protocols, a hotel accommodation and so forth, and these are in place. So I think as a country we are ready to host this important event, and we look forward to receiving our visitors over the weekend as they start coming in.
I want to look at the issue of infrastructure at Mulungushi. How well are we doing?
Well, so far so good.
People would have expected you, for instance, to put up a state-of-the-art conference center using the funds that you're spending.
Yes, Grevazio, we have a dome, first of all, where the opening ceremony is going to be held, and we also have the old wing, which has been upgraded, including the new one. We have a number of marquees that have been put aside. We have the mobile clinic site. So there are a number of things that are happening in there that will actually, we're using that money to actually ensure that we expend them on these particular infrastructure, including transport and other logistics. So I think we are on track. So far, so good.
I want you to speak to the benefits of having this conference. We've had probably one too many in a very short period. We had the IPU, and now we have this ADB, very, very big. 4,000, 5,000 delegates.
That's good. I mean, the benefits are immense, Grevazio. First of all, we'll have a cross-pollination of ideas, like I said, when the discussions are taking place. And some of the benefits are going to be long-term with regard to, you know, economic cooperation and also trying to lure investors to come into the country. This is an opportunity for us as a country. But more importantly, if you look at the hospitality industry, the hotels, there will be an influx of foreign exchange coming in, including, you know, what about, say, for instance, the taxis that are going to be used by the people who will be attending these meetings? They'll pay for that. So we shall see a foreign exchange coming into the country, and at the same time, this is an opportunity for us to showcase what Zambia can do. We have stands with regard to tourism, to say, look, we have stands with regard to tourism and also other investment opportunities that are available in this particular country. So apart from just a meeting, it's a promotional event for us so that we can attract foreign direct investment in areas where we think we have the potential. So the benefits are immense, but at the end of the day, we shall be a net gainer of foreign exchange. Even the 50 million that we're going to spend is something that which will be squared as the money is coming, because the people will be paying to the hotels, and the people will spend also buy crafts from the ordinary people in say Kawata, also just to, you know, ensure that our people are providing, say, meals, because we have a catering area. They'll be able again also to benefit by, you know, getting some monies as they sell their food to the people who will be attending the meetings. So in terms of benefits, I think the people down there who are doing ordinary business will benefit. The corporate world will also benefit, in the sense that this is an opportunity for them to engage business people outside the country and see how then they can partner in order to influence or the foreign direct investment coming into the country. So there will be benefit at corporate level, there will be benefit for the small and medium scale enterprises, and we have the cultural nights that will be taking place. We have the chitenje materials that are going to be sold. So we do hope that people can actually, there will be benefits accruing to everybody.
We are looking at a very big conference, and obviously the private sector are sitting on the fence and watching exactly what opportunities do they have now. How can they jump on this? How can they freely walk into Mulungushi and strike deals?
Well, there have been private sectors that have already been accredited to this event. So they'll be coming to Mulungushi, even as this afternoon we had people trooping into Mulungushi Conference Center, and the accreditation has started, that it will be going on over the weekend. So yes, we do look forward to the private sector coming in and ensuring that they engage the various business partners or prospective business partners that are going to be available during the event.
40 meetings over a period of 5 days, this must really be intense.
Yes, it is, because we have a number of meeting rooms, and we do hope that the meetings will move smoothly. We have the events management team, plus we have also our own committee that will be working round the clock to ensure that the meetings are up and running as scheduled.
Now, in terms of job employment opportunities, would you say this has created something?
Oh yes, we've recruited a number of youths to help us with the protocol assignments and also the ushering in. So there's quite a number. I can't give the definite number, but they were going through some induction training. So that's one area. I also talked about the issue of transportation, the issue of accommodation. I think our hospitality industries, the hotels, the lodges, they're excited because they're going to have monies coming in, not in kwacha terms, but in foreign exchange, in dollars. So I think during this period of time, you see that, yes, we'll have these benefits accruing. Employment creation, because in the hotels, sometimes you need an extra hand to help you to deal with a number of clients that will be coming in.
Hosting a big meeting like this one, what does that say about investor confidence, investor ratings for the country?
Well, when you host a meeting like this one, Grevazio, it shows that the international community has confidence in you as a country, because prior to coming here, they have to do an assessment whether you have the ability to do it and whether the environment is also conducive for the people to come, because we are having about, you already mentioned the number, 4,000 plus, 5,000. I mean, it's a big number of foreigners coming into Zambia. So that means they've done an assessment that Zambia is a country where this particular event can be held and the atmosphere is conducive.
So hosting this event, yes, well, after AfDB annual meetings, then what? What is the way forward?
What is the way forward? More investment opportunities, better understanding to deal with the issues of climate change and also energy. So because we'll have resolutions made there and then, but apart from that, then we need to develop strategies to implement whatever is going to be resolved. So at the end of the day, we are going to benefit as a country because of the cross-pollination of ideas that we're going to tap in during this important meeting.
When you're speaking to people watching out there, the Zambians, they want you to speak about something that is going to be resolved from this meeting, and they're going to come out with it. Is there such a thing after these meetings?
Yes, after this meeting, like we said, especially energy. I mean, we have load shedding now. So what you hope to do with the ideas that we're going to get, this is something that we can put in practice and see if we could go into other sources of, generating electricity. Why not take the solar way of, generating electricity? So if that is something, and we can have people coming in here, and the gestation period for, coming up with solar-powered energy is shorter as opposed to hydro, which would take us a couple more years.
We have 4,000 people, delegates, visitors coming into Zambia. What are you telling the Zambians in terms of hosting them? And
well, Zambia has a record for being a beacon of peace and, good hospitality. So I would urge the Zambians to accord our visitors the same hospitality that they are known for, so that at the end of the day, they will be marketing this particular country not only for hospitality purposes, but also as a tourist attraction, because the first impressions last. When these people go out there, they will be able to say, yes, we came to Zambia, the people are so hospitable, and they were able to help us even when they get lost. Sometimes visitors do that. They would want to go on their own. Once in a while, please, let's see that we uphold the spirit of being a very hospitable country, and at the end of the day, everybody will be thinking, well, I went to Zambia. Then they'll be able to tell a story that, look, this is a good place that you can actually visit. So I think I would encourage the Zambians to maintain the peace and harmony that we've exhibited, and this will help us to encourage other people to come here, not only to do business, but also to visit us, and at the end of the day, will make Zambia a better place than we found it.
As we close the interview, is there any hope for a Zambian becoming president of the Africa Development Bank?
Oh yes,
in the near future, in the furthest future.
Yeah, we should always hope for the best, and I think there's always room for us to be president of the Africa Development Bank. It may take us a couple of years, but we shall get there. What we need is to do a lot of networking and ensure that come after maybe 5 years, then we can have a Zambian seated there as ADB president. All what it takes is good networking with other peers, and at the end of the day, you can get the presidency.
I was going to ask you, what does it take?
What it takes? Good networking.
A good CV?
Yeah, a good CV.
Not good enough.
Well, you can have a good CV, but then you should also have the ability to articulate yourself that you've got a vision for Africa, and other African countries, including other shareholders, can buy in, because the presidency, to ascend to the presidency of the Africa Development Bank, is done in a democratic manner. Votes are cast. So people do a lot of lobbying. They do a lot of lobbying to other countries to support our candidate. And you can only do that if you network with other African countries and say, hey, wait a minute, we have X as a dynamic leader, and would believe that if you support the Zambian candidate, you'll be able to push this particular bank to greater heights. So that's what we need. We need a situation where Zambians should learn to network with other countries so that they are able to sell their candidate to become the African Development Bank president in the foreseeable future. And that is something that can be done, Grevazio. Everybody does that.
Mr. Yamba, thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you. Highly appreciated.
You've been watching Sunday Interview, and the guest this evening was the Secretary to the Treasury, Mr. Fredson Yamba, who was speaking about the annual meetings for the African Development Bank, set to start tomorrow, 23rd May, and will run up to 27th May 2016. Till next week at the same time, pleasant viewing.